So we have seen how to start a Julia session, right? And how to do the basic stuff, right? Like running a script. So the next step would be to deal with packages, yes, and work with environments, right, that are very powerful in Julia. So as you can see here, the Julia packages extend the scope of Julia considerably. Yeah? So in Julia, when you install it, it comes with the so-called base, yeah, library and the standard library. Yeah? And these are the most basic routines that you will need. For instance, as I showed you here before, I didn't have to load any module to use print function, yeah? And to do the basic stuff. And they are included in Julia. But other people have developed modules, right? And they allow you to do more specific stuff. So instead of writing code yourself, take a look, and there could be some code that matches your need. But Julia, as it is a new language, right? It could be that no code is there, right? And you can see that as a drawback, right? But also one can see that as an opportunity to make impact. Yeah? In Python, for instance, there are even several versions or several codes that do the same things, yeah? In some different ways, but essentially they do the same thing. But in Julia, there is still a space for doing something new and have an impact, I would say. So isolated environments solve different problems. Like for instance, one can install a specific and also older versions of the packages. One can create one environment for each project. Yeah, and this is very useful because the environments in Julia are lightweight. Right? So if you want to create an environment for each project that you are developing, it's the recommended way, yeah? Instead of working with the installed packages globally. Also, you can remove the environment and create a new one without any issue. Yeah? So we'll see how to install packages and how to work with isolated environments and check some pre-installed packages that are available at UPPMAX. So, okay, so in the Python lesson, I am doing a comparison here, which is some kind of opinion, yeah, right? But all the I don't I don't endorse any software, so it's just an opinion, right? So we saw that there are different ways to deal with isolated environments. For instance, Conda, PIP, yeah? And it could be an advantage because you can say, well, if I don't have a package available on one of them, or it's easier to install with the other, then it's okay. I have two options. But at the same time, it can create confusion, right? Because if one doesn't understand the basics or how these package managers work, then one can create something like installing packages with Conda. Then one doesn't know what package is installed or what version. And then one tried also PIP, and it can get mixed, right? If we don't understand exactly what we are doing. So it can be a shortcoming, but also an advantage. It depends on your perspective. But I think the situation is simplified in Julia because everything is managed by Julia itself, right? And if you want to read more about the environments, take a look at this documentation page. Yeah. And you will see here that Julia distinguishes between the so-called project environments and package directories. Yeah. So the difference is that in these project environments, only the TOML files are present, but in these package directories, there are also files, source files, right? And with a certain structure. Like for instance, one needs a folder called SCR, right? And the script name besides the TOML files. But essentially, they create environments. In addition to these two types of environments, we will see later that Julia can combine the environments and create the so-called stacked environments, which are more realistic, right? Especially if you are developing a larger project. So here, so once you started working with Julia, as I did here, you will see that in the default folder for package installation, if you don't change it, you will see a folder called .julia, which is located in the home directory on Kebnekaise, right? This is Kebnekaise system. And this Julia folder contains several subfolders where the different files required for Julia are stored, right? So how do the package manager deals with the installed packages, right? So in principle, and I will make here an analogy, right? all the packages have some kind of identifiers, right? Like, for instance, the social security number, yeah? So it's like a person. If you want to localize a person, then there is an ID, and then the task of the package manager is to make a kind of a graph, right? That allows it to localize what dependencies and what versions of the packages you need, and everything will be done by the package manager in Julia. So packages use these UUIDs for identifying its content and yes, and its version and yes. So how to see what environments are active, right? So I will go to my previous directory. So here you start a session, right? And if you type the variable load path, you will see what environments are active. And the first one is the current one, yes. And this environment is the default environment for the Julia version, right? And this is the standard library that comes with the Julia installation. Notice that it's important here that at UPPMAX there is also some central library that is available for Julia. And this is because some packages are available already. Yes, they have installed some packages that are very common. This will save you time in installing packages. But also, you need to take care of this situation because if you use this path, then you will rely on the version of the installed packages or at UPPMAX, right? So, okay, so let me see here. I started a new session in Julia, and then I call the package manager with the using command. The package manager is pkg, yeah. And if I want to get the project information, I can type pkg project, and this will give the information. In particular, it says that up to now, nothing has been installed, yeah? And also, this is the location of the Julia environment, right? So where the information for the packages that I will install on this global environment or default environment will be stored, right? So now imagine that I decided to add a package, in particular this density functional theory package, yeah? So then I can type pkg add and the name of the package. So it's a bit large, so it takes some time. And at the end, you will see that in the project information, this package is also included, and this is the UUID of the package. So it allows Julia to identify what the package version is it. And also you will see where the information of the package install is included, and this is in the home directory and the .julia file folder. Okay, so how I am in time? So will be a bit over time. So okay, now let me create the first environment, right? So the first environment is a project environment. And here you can do it in the following way. You call the using pkg command, right? And then you move to the shell mode, right? Create a folder with the name that you want. In particular, this is the folder that I want to create. And here, I can do it here. The DFTK program finished already. So I will move to the shell. And here I can create my first environment. Then I move to my first. And return to Julia mode. In the package, here is important step. I type activate and dot. And this will activate a new environment. Notice here that the default environment changed to the current environment, which is located in the current folder, right? So how can I abandon this environment? Or how can I leave this environment? Just activate with a blank space. Then I return to the previous one. So here, if you check the status of the project, you will see that the DFTK program was installed. So now I can activate again the environment. And now I am inside the environment. And if I type status, you will see that the project is empty. So I have it cannot see the DFTK installed package, right? So this is very important. Notice here that the load path will give you, as before, the different paths that are available for the current project. So in the list of available paths is the current folder. Then we have also available the default, right? And the standard library, yes? So even when we haven't requested to have this path, it is there by default, right? So it can be useful, for instance, if you install, as in my case, a DFTK in a more global environment, and then you want to install it in your new environment as here, because then it will just take some registers, right? Update the registers, and it doesn't have to download anything, and everything will be faster, yeah? But also, you need to take care of that for purposes of reproducibility, as I said, because if you load some pre-installed packages in the environment, then you are relying on this environment and you don't know what these packages are or what the versions are. So now I am here in the first environment and I can add the DFTK package. So notice here it says solving the package, right? And it's just updating the registers, right? It is not downloading anything, and that's why this package installation was very fast. Okay? So, okay, now if you're curious on what the module is, or what environment is doing, so you can return to Julia, go to shell, and type ls. Yeah. So you see that this environment created two files, manifest and project.tml. So project.tml, TOML is a very general description of the project. And it just contains a few lines saying what are the packages installed. The manifest is the one that contains the specific information. So you are not encouraged to edit this by yourself, yeah, because you can spoil the installation. Okay, so we have seen how to deactivate the environment. Right now we are in the first environment, then we type activate the space, and then we are in the default one. So in order to activate the environment, we have seen one option, which is activate. Place first of all, place place yourself in the folder where the environment is located. Then type activate and dot. This is one way. And notice here that I am in the package mode. So it's also possible to do that in the Julian mode. If I type TKJ, activate, and then dot for current, and it is activating the environment as well. Yeah, you can check it, and it's activated. So, but imagine that you have a script, right, inside this folder. And you have already some project here, and you want to activate the environment, right? Which is given by the TOML files right here. How do I do that? Well, I start the Julia with -- project, and then with a dot. Yeah? So it will start Julia with the environment activated. These are three ways to activate the environment. Okay, the next type of environment that I mentioned is called the package environment. And here,
Pedro,
yes.
Shall we take a break first and then continue?
Okay, yes, yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, so how to create a package environment. So we have seen before how to create an environment, right? By using a folder, a simple folder. But sometimes we also need an structure in that folder. For instance, if you are developing some specific software, right? And in Julia, you can do this with the generate function. Yeah. So how do we do that? Let me see. I don't have it. Okay, so how can we do this? We start the Julia session, and then you can do this in package mode or in Julia mode, but if you do this in Julian mode, remember that you need to put pkj.generate and parentheses, right? So if you want to save some keys, strokes, then just go to the package mode. And then here in package mode, type the generate and the name of the package. In this case, I will type in my first package. Yeah. And it tells you I'm generating the project. Yes, first package. And notice here that some files are written, right? And the first file is the project TOML. And then this is the structure that I mentioned before, where a source file is included with your script, right? So notice here, it's important if you are using this type of new languages like Julia and Rust, for instance. So they try to follow this structure, right? And this is very specific, right? But if you are using some Rust development as well, then this TOM file could cause some issue. Yeah? But this is more specific. And just to keep in mind that new languages are trying to follow this type of structure here for the directory folders. So, okay, so I have generated this folder, and then what I can do is I move to the shell, and then I do a CD with my first package. Now I am located in the first package folder. And as before, I can go to the package mode and activate environment. So now you see that the environment in this project environment, it's is activated already. Yeah. So what happened if we type now the command that we previously used? So I'm getting this error here because although this is a very standard package, PKJ, it is not loaded by default. So you need to load it using PKJ. And now you see the project information. If you remember before, it was the default with nothing installed. And now we get some name for the project and the UUID, which is the identifier of the project, and the location of the TOM file and the stuff for this environment. So notice here that it is located in the current folder, right? Not in the home directory as we saw before. Okay. So as before, if we are curious and try to see what paths are available, we can also see that the current path is available, and also the default one and the standard library. just to keep in mind that they are available by default. And with some possible additions at UPPMAX, where some packages have been pre-installed, right, to save you time. So now we are here in my package environment. So what happens if we try to install a package, for instance, Flux? Flux is a machine learning package that is available in Julia. And it has several routines for doing the machine learning models, and it runs also on GPUs, and it's quite fast, I would say. So now this package is being installed in the environment, right? So we have talked about the default paths that are available, and I would say if you don't want to customize or to change the path, then it's okay. So Julia will do the job for you, right? Just to keep it in mind that you are using some specific versions of the software that is already installed, right? And but if for instance, if your project, or if you are interested in having exactly the same versions of the software that you are using, then maybe you are interested in modifying the path, yes, that Julia can see, or yes, that are available in the Julia session, right? So, but this is a warning. So if you don't want to do that, your script will work, or most likely will work, without doing this change, right? So how to change this path? Just do this, use this environment variable, and here you can change the path, right? As in the common Linux command, right? Or you can also use these shortcuts that Julia will interpret. This is related to the current environment. You can also add other environments that we saw before. Let me see. If we go to this, if you add also this one, you will be using the default one and also the standard library. So again, you don't have to change that in order to run your script. This is just a customization that for more advanced use maybe is required, right? So for instance, if I set the path just to the current session, the current project, yeah, then if I type load path, I will see only this one. And the standard library is not included, and also the default one is not included. So how to change this path? Use the empty function. For instance, if you are in Julia and you don't want to export the path, yes, in the Julia session, use the empty command, and also to clean the path. And then you can add the paths by using the pash command, right? So this is a more advanced stuff. Right? Environments. We have seen the two types of environments that are available in Julia. The first one was with a simple folder, yes, and in the second one, basically it's a folder with has some structure for the files that are inside, right? But we can also create stacks of environments, right? And this can be seen with the load path that we monitored before. The load path you see here, we have different environments available in this Julia project, right? And it's called stack because there are different environments that can be available for your specific project. So how to empty the path, use this command. You don't need to do that in most of the cases, right? For simple codes, you don't have to do that. And this will allow you to modify the path. Here I use a simple example. If you try to use the DFTK package, you will see the error here because the package is not installed. Although I had to install it in the default environment, right? As use a simple example. So install a package in the default environment and then remove this path from the load path variable and try to load it, and you will see this error. So the problem is solved if you add that path to the load path variable. So this can help you, for instance, if your project requires some very specific versions, or you are very careful about the versions of the software that you are using, even in the standard library and the default one. Yes, this is how I added the path again with the push, and then you can use the DFTK again. So this is a special or specific for UPPMAX central library. I mentioned previously that at UPPMAX there is a central library which contains some common packages, right? That they are useful, right? And that's why UPPMAX install it, right? And it saves you time. So this is especially fine when you're working on Bianca, since you don't have to install it. Yes. If you work on Raycam, you can ignore it and do all installations by yourself. So control the central library by typing Julia help and the version, and this will show you the packages that are available for that Julia version. So on the shell, import a package manager and then activate the different environments and check the status to see what packages are installed. . This is very general, but I have mentioned several times the using command, yes, for loading the packages in a Julia session. So one can also import the packages, but there are some nuances, right, in the way that these two commands work, right? In particular, using allows you to use some exported variables and functions, right? While importing doesn't make it available on the session. So you have to do that explicitly. So, but essentially for the most basic task, they work in a similar manner. So here's how to use the module functions with import a module, and then the module and fn the function name, or using, yes, will import all the functions that are exported in that module as well. So very specific for UPPMAX, these are the packages that have been pre-installed. And they are very common, benchmark tools for doing benchmark on your code, CSV for working with the comma-separated files, CUDA, MPI distributed, and some plotting packages are also there. So situation it's different at HPC2N because here the Julia versions installed include only the base and the standard library modules, right? So if you want to use, for instance, CSV or CUDA, you will need to install it by yourself. So here are some exercises, right? And here the key points for this lecture is that the installation of packages can be done by Julia itself with the PKG manager, right? If you want to add the packages, the add command can be used in package mode, or the pkg.add and parentheses with the name of the package inside. So virtual environments allow you to deal with a specific version of the packages, and this is done by Julia itself, right? So they allow you to create a project that is reproducible. At the beginning of the lecture, I mentioned that the environments in Julia are lightweight. And you have already seen that because when Julia creates an environment, as I did here, you see that the files that it creates are just these two files, yes? And that is handy, because if you are not interested in this environment, just remove it, right? And it's lightweight, right? And it's a good practice to work in an isolated environment. So third-party software are not required, right? So everything is handled by Julia. And notice the difference in the centrally installed packages at UPPMAX, right? You can get information from the Julia shell, as we saw before, and also from the bash shell with the help command. So is there any questions at this point?
I could also mention that at UPPMAX, if you want to save some space, you could use the central packages. Yes.
Yeah, so I can add some information that I didn't show. For instance, if you check this project.tml file, you will see only the version of the package that is installed with the UUID, right? But if you check the manifest, you will see the specific information. As it says at the beginning, it's not recommended to edit this manually, right? So these two files will allow you to reproduce your project if you move, for instance, to a different machine. So, okay. So I think I can move to the next lecture.